Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Etech Leadership Table. This is a podcast where we invite you to pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee, and join us as we tackle some remarkable discussions on everything leadership. I'm Melissa Wood. I'm your host. I'm the Dean of Leadership Development at Etech Global Services. Welcome to the Leadership Table. You are not going to believe who we have at the table today. When I would sit down as a kid, sometimes my parents would invite special guests to dinner. And today is a special guest, our very own Mr. Matt Rocco, our president and CEO of Etech. Welcome, Mr. Matt Rocco.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm excited to be able to be here and spend this time with you. And with our
I'm excited.
Almost 4,000
our podcast
team members out there.
Yeah,
our podcast audience.
Waiting. Yeah, our podcast audience have been waiting to see you. You're the special guest at the leadership table. So for all of our podcasters, this is your time. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea. Pull up to the table with Matt and I, because we're going to tackle some. I see you. What are you drinking today, Matt? What?
Lemonade. Sugar-free lemonade.
All right. That is one of my first questions I ask usually when we do podcasts. Like, what's your drink? Is it sugar-free or is it real like sugar lemon water?
It's sugar-free lemonade.
All right. Very good for you.
Yes.
You.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Well, I'm really glad to have you here at the table today. We're going to talk about probably your favorite topic is servant leadership. And I know that our podcasters have been asking about this, and they have several questions that we prepared in advance for you to go over. But let me tell a little bit of our podcasters some things about Matt Rocco that you may not know. So Matt's a published author, and there'll be a link in the description here if you guys want to go read some of the books that he's co-authored. He's a husband to his college sweetheart, April Rocco, and I know that makes him smile. They've been married for, Matt, how long have you been married?
34 years now. 34.
Oh, good answer, because I'm sure April's going to be listening to this. He's a father. He's a father of 5. That's amazing. And recently, he's now got a new title of father-in-law to 2 new, a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law. Is that right, Matt?
That's correct. Yep.
And those are recent weddings. You've been busy these last
busy year. Yeah. Awesome.
You're no stranger to teamwork. I don't know if a lot of our podcast listeners that are sitting at the table with us today, if you guys know that Matt was a basketball player in Pennsylvania, and he also was a baseball player. We'll have to get him on another podcast to talk about his baseball career. But in his senior year at college in Pennsylvania, he served as the team captain in his senior year. So Matt, was that your first induction into leadership, or did you serve in a leadership role prior to being the team captain of that senior year basketball team?
I had been captain in high school of the basketball team, and I had also been on student council, and I had a leadership role in the fraternity I belonged to in college. So it wasn't my first, but it was one of the ones that that I was most proud of, because I was the only senior on the team, and I had a bunch of younger guys that really were looked up to me to set the example of what it meant to play college basketball, because it was a lot different than high school. You get to college, every player was a great high school player, and now you're in college and you're no longer the best player on the team. Now you're part of a team, and high school is a little bit different because typically there's 1 or 2 guys that make the team go. In college, everybody was a good player, and you really had to learn how to take the skills that you had and incorporate that into a team, because it was all about winning. It wasn't about individual performance. And so anyway, that was one of my most enjoyable years, just because I got to really influence some of the younger guys on the team.
Yeah, and I see that's kind of worked into your corporate America world, the time that you spent almost 40 years in this industry. So well, I'm just going to see if I can tap into some of that wisdom today. I know servant leadership really is personally important to you. I've known you now for many years, and that's actually what I was drawn to Etech with, as my conversation with you over the need that you had on creating a culture of servant leadership. So if it's okay with you, our podcasters, they have some questions here, and I just want to dive into some of those questions, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we talk about servant leadership, it's the foundation of Etech, obviously. Tell us why servant leadership is the culture at Etech, and what inspired or motivated you to create this type of culture at Etech?
That's a wonderful first question, and I've shared with many over the years that early in my career, I was like a lot of other leaders. I was, for me, it was about the money, about the recognition. The game was accumulate wealth, and you did that by performing at work. As an individual contributor, and going after the promotions and the recognition. So the monetary rewards that came with the promotions and the recognitions, I chased hard as a young leader in corporate America. At the same time, April, my wife, had started her own career. She was in retail and was moving up the ladder probably quicker than I was. So we were both in our newly married and chasing the American dream, and just trying to accumulate money and drive nice cars and wear nice clothes, and there's nothing wrong with that. At that point in our life, at that point in our lives, that was that was a priority for us, and we started having our first child, and then another one anyway. And so her priorities started changing, but I was still running the race. And it probably wasn't into my 40s that I began to realize that there had to be more to life than accumulating wealth, buying nice things, and providing for my family. And it was around this time where I started really reading a lot and talking to some of my mentors about what is life's purpose? Is it to make money, pay taxes, raise kids, and die? I mean, is that it? What is life all about, and what is my purpose? And through a whole bunch of, I can't even, conversations and books read and seminars attended, it was during this time that I really began to understand and embrace what I felt was my purpose. And that was to use the resources that I had, to use my time, my talents, and my treasures that I had been blessed with, to give to others, to make a difference in others. And this was at a time when I had, I was very fortunate. The timing was incredible because I had spent most of my career with Dun & Bradstreet, great company, Fortune 500 company. And I was at a point where I had just left D&B. I had moved to Texas, was working with Bell South. And that's around the time when all this was going on with me. Bell South, another great company, big company. And it was during this time when the transition from Bell South to Etech happened. And, I don't believe most things in life are by coincidence. But when that happened, and now all of a sudden I was leading a smaller company, I was thrust into a leadership role, senior leadership role in a small company. It's really when things began to unfold. It didn't happen right away, but it began to unfold. It began to come crystal clear for me that my purpose as an individual, what I was beginning to embrace, why not take that same purpose and introduce that at Etech? And that purpose was servant leadership. You lead others by serving them, by investing in them. And it was around that time that I began, really digging into John Maxwell, Robert Greenleaf, and others, other great authors and motivational speakers that really embrace the concept of servant leadership, which was so different than what I had been taught at Dun & Bradstreet. I grew up in a very, back in the 80s and 90s where, it was a very autocratic style of management. You did things because I'm the boss and you're not, and you're going to do what I say. There was a lot of intimidation. And while you can drive results that way, absolutely, I don't believe you can sustain them. And that's really what drew me to servant leadership. It was that you can accomplish the same things as you can in an autocratic style of management. And sometimes you have to resort to, different styles of leadership. But I believe that in healthy organizations, at the foundation is servant leadership and spending your life investing and helping others reach their potential. And when they do that, then they in turn begin to invest and help others and so forth. And it trickles out through the whole organization. When I began to really embrace my life purpose, then I began to also talk to people like Melissa and others, Veronica. I had a great pastor at the time, Justin Beatles, and his wife was Heather, who happened to work for us as in leadership development. We really began digging in and talking about, okay, let's look at Etech's mission and purpose, and let's really start from scratch. And what is it that we want to accomplish at Etech and why? And then how are we going to do that with a focus on changing our leadership style, just totally transforming how we lead the organization, taking it from a top down, really, to a bottom down, or bottom up approach where the leader's at the bottom. I'm at the bottom of the pyramid. Flip the pyramid. And so, as you know, Melissa, we began that journey back in 2008, 7, 8, 9. I mean, it began and it's still evolving, but when I found my purpose in life, and it just so happened, it happened at the right time. And this wasn't by chance, this was being orchestrated above. And, I was also in the role where I was now responsible for leading an organization that would grow to, where we are today. We didn't know that back in 2005, 2006, that we were going to be where we are today. But, to see the foundation of this company based on servant leadership has been, it's just been, I get goosebumps when I think about it, and I look back at all the people that have been involved in that and that I have run up alongside them and they alongside me, and what we've been able to accomplish. It's been incredible. And it's been done with, very little outside help. We haven't gone out and borrowed a lot of money. We haven't bought other companies. We've done everything organically. We've grown and developed by growing our leaders, investing in our customers, becoming trusted advisors, gaining their confidence, and then certainly, just giving back to each other, our customers, and our communities. So anyway, that's kind of, you asked the question, where did it start from? That's where it started. And there's so much history to that and so many twists and turns. And when I look back on it, it's crystal clear to me that there wasn't anything there by accident. How did I end up in Texas? Why did I end up in Texas? Why did I leave corporate America, and come along with this guy, Dilla Barrett, who didn't know what a call center was, but wanted to invest in the call center so he could hopefully put jobs in India one day. In the facility he built over there at InfoCity. It's mind-boggling. But so here we are, 2023. We'll be here in a blink of an eye, and this journey began back in 2003. So 20 years in the making, and we're still, our best is still yet to come, I believe. So.
I believe that. I believe that too. This is one of the reasons I wanted you to sit at the table with us and talk about this. it's just enjoyable for us as listeners to kind of walk behind in your footsteps, and just how you clarified and unpacked that you personally had to go through a head change and a heart change before all this stuff was laid out for you, right? So you didn't have the opportunity to be the senior leader of a small company until your heart and head had changed the years before. So just walking in your footsteps, like we have done so many great leaders. I know you don't consider yourself one of those heroes or a great leader, but so many of us do, to see the foundation and walk with you as you walked on this journey. It's been an honor and a pleasure to me to walk beside you as I'm starting to see this unfold. And like you said, our best is yet to come. So as we kind of think about the servant leadership culture, there used to be a show on TV called Mythbusters. These guys would go in there and they'd be busting all these myths, people would say. Yeah, and I used to absolutely love the Mythbusters, but there's some myths about servant myths about servant leadership. And I want to throw out a few myths, and I want you to bust these myths for me, if you will. Yeah. Okay? Because servant leadership gets a bad rep sometimes, because I heard you say, hey, you can definitely drive results with intimidation. You can be an autocratic, you can be a different type of leadership style, and they drive results. But you said this wasn't sustained results. So let's look at some myths. Ready?
Yes.
All right. Myth number one. Let's see if you can bust this one. Servant leaders are weak.
That's one of the ones I hear. They're weak. They're soft. They're good cheerleaders. Actually, my partner in crime used to think that way, and way back when that he didn't always agree with me with the direction we were going, but he's there now. But so I think what happens is my experience would be, people think a servant and a servant leader, they automatically interpret that to be subservient. So someone that is subservient is afraid or intimidated to disagree or correct or confront team members, right? They're more concerned. The myth is they're more concerned with keeping the peace rather than taking the lead. And that couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth, because what I've studied and what I learned through practice was that once you have invested in someone and you have a relationship built on trust and respect, you can be a lot more direct, you can be a lot more forceful with that person, because they trust you and they respect you and they know where your heart is. And versus if I'm just coming in and pounding on you and making demands that you feel are not attainable or not sustainable, we're never going to have that conversation. And what's just going to happen, you're going to eventually burn out and leave. Yeah. But if I have invested in you and you know that I'm authentic and you believe that I value you, I can sit down with you and I can effectively address, just like you do with your children, effectively address the areas that really they need to take a look at, because they're not helping themselves and they're not helping the company and they're not helping our customers. And so it takes courage to do that. Yeah. But what I've learned is those conversations can be a lot, I don't think they're ever comfortable, but they can be a lot less comfortable, and they can be a lot more effective when you are operating from a place of servant leadership. And then it allows, what I've seen firsthand, it's allowed good interaction and good collaboration of setting aggressive goals, and making sure that everyone on my team individually understands what they need to do in order to make those goals a reality. And you know, when that happens, then the job becomes, I don't have to worry about beating you up every day to get the best out of you. You perform because you want to perform. My job then is to remove obstacles that are going to impede your progress and give you the tools and keep investing in you so you just become better at what you're doing. And it just shifts the whole, I'm not managing you anymore then. I'm serving you.
Yeah.
And I'm coaching you. I'm not your manager. So, if the fact that a servant leader is liked by their people, and not everyone has worked with me has liked me as I've been a servant leader, but I don't. What is it that's weak about servant leadership? No one's ever, that's the myth. They're weak. They're soft. I've had that said to me by my boss. I've had it said to me by many people over the years, and I just, okay, tell me what's weak about it.
Yeah.
They don't have, and I think it's the mindset again. I go back to what I first said. People think of serve and they think of subservient, and that's not what it is. So,
yeah. I see now.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I see now why you were picked to be the captain of that basketball team, because you want to win. You obviously are competitive. I can see it. I mean, I know you personally, but I know you're very competitive. You want to win, but you know that, and everything. But
everything.
So when we talk, you really did debunk this myth of leaders are weak, because you said it. You hit it perfectly. It's courage. A servant leader has to have the courage to know when to say something and when not to say something, right? When to push and when not to push. And that is the opposite of weak. It makes me think about a quick story that I love to go watch different trainings. So I went years ago and I watched the Texas high school football summer, they call them two-a-days. You know how they call them two-a-days in Texas? The high school football team?
2 practices a day,
Yeah, 2 practices a day in the heat, in Texas heat in August, right? All these teenagers out there. Well, there's a coach out there, and he was a servant coach, just like what you're talking about. You can obviously tell this guy wanted their team to win state. That's the ultimate goal. Begin with the end in mind. Like, they would huddle up and they would be like, win state, win state. But you could tell it wasn't about the win to this coach. It was about serving each player, helping each player become his best potential, right?
Right.
So I watched these kids pull these tires. They had these huge tractor tires taped to, they were like on ropes, and they were pulling them up the hill and down the hill. They would pull so hard that they would just physically get sick, right?
Yeah,
well, this coach's wife was expecting their firstborn baby. And every day before practice was over, he'd make these kids pull these tires up and down the hill. It's not something they wanted to do, but they did it, right? You and I couldn't do that today. I couldn't pull one tire. I don't want to look at a tire. So the coach gets this phone call that his wife's in labor, and it's right before this team is to pull tires. Okay, the coach leaves. The other coaches are like, "Hey, practice is over." You're not going to believe what I saw after that. I saw these high school kids strap on the ropes on these tires. Coaches left the field, and they were pulling these tires.
Did it themselves. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And that's what there's nothing weak about that coach. They went on to win state. They've won state championships before, but that coach knew the difference of how to build strong players through this leadership style. So I agree with you about that. Servant leaders are weak. You and I could tell stories for days. All right, here's another myth I need you to debunk.
I just want to say one thing.
Get a sip of your lemonade. Yeah.
Yep. I want to say one thing on that too. I look back at there's been so many great examples of where and of how our leaders have reacted during crises, right? And certainly the pandemic. But I think, something personal for me, when I was in the coma and doctors were convinced I wasn't going to make it, how Jim and Kayleen and Veronica and you and Ronnie stepped up during that time and not just held the company together, but propelled us forward. And even after I had come through and I was going to be okay. I don't think I was ever okay. I'll never be okay, but I was going to make it, I wasn't able to fulfill my role as CEO for a good bit of time. And I wasn't concerned in the least, because I knew the company was in great hands, because I knew the amount of effort that had gone into developing Jim and Kayleen and Ronnie and you and Veronica and Guru. And, I just knew that everything would be in good hands, and it enabled me to focus on my recovery. And anyway, it reminded me of the story you say with the coach having to leave. And so I was absent there for 2 months. I was totally absent because I was in the coma. And then even when I came out, it was another many, many months till I could even start to even think about work, and really be able to help in some capacity. But anyway, it's so true.
That's proof. I mean, that right there, you don't have to go read a book. Listen here, listeners, you don't have to read a book. You don't have to look at an article for that. That's actual proof. This is a true story that happened in our lives here at Etech. Matt Rocco is a servant leader. He had to step out of the game for a moment, and I watched this team still pull the tire in the hottest month and the hardest time. They still pulled the tire for our leaders. So that's proof right there. So here's another myth I want you to debunk, and this one really gets me sometimes. And we're a business. We're here to make money so we can do some things. Here's the myth: servant leaders have low standards. Low standards. What do you hear that one? What do you think about it?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say what I really think of it, but anyway, it's so.
Anyway. Hey, this is not the PG podcast. This is the real Matt Rocco raw.
So I think when I had the great opportunity to spend 16 years with Dun & Bradstreet and almost 4 years with Bell South. And when I look back at those and how, how we measure, what our standards were and how they were measured, everything was based on output, regardless of the method. And that's the difference with servant leadership, because you still have to have output. Like you said, we're a business and we're going to be measured on output. The people I report to, Dilip and the board, they look at one number every month, right? They look at the bottom line. And so that's the standard they have for me. But I don't look at that. I focus in on the standards we're using to get to the scoreboard, not the scoreboard. You got to look at the scoreboard, but I'm looking at the methods. I'm looking at how well prepared we are, how equipped, how good of a job we're doing in preparing and equipping our team members, our leaders. Look at, your whole department. Your whole purpose is to develop leaders at Etech. And we spend, we invest a good bit of money in equipping you and your team so you can equip others. I don't think a lot of companies do that quite like us. I think it was Steve Jobs that said, what is the cost? What if you, what if you hire great leaders and don't train them? Wait. What if you hire great leaders and train them and they leave? And somebody said, and Steve said, well, what if you hire great leaders and don't train them and they stay? Or, something like, so
yeah.
Look, it's a requirement that we, for each other and for our customers, that we are developing great leaders. Great leaders, everything rises and falls on leadership. If you believe that, which I do, Great leaders are going to deliver. Standards are going to rise to their capability, right? John Maxwell calls it the law of the lid. So, your leaders are going to set standards based on their lid. And if we're not developing every leader to be the best that they can be, then whatever standards we have, we're not going to meet those. So, I think if you look again, let's go back to the example we were just talking about when I was sick. I think Jim and Kayleen and you guys all came in and probably set higher standards, what you expected during my absence. And that's servant leadership. They came in and they wanted to not only maintain or survive, they wanted to thrive and take the company forward. So a lot of us grew up and we're used to a hierarchy that was top down, power struggle. So I just think when you introduce people to when you invert that pyramid, the standards that get set really they bubble bottom up. So and how do you do that? And we talk about this all the time. You set clear expectations. You give timely and constructive feedback. You hold yourself and the others accountable for the behavior as well as the results. Look, I've been, in sales organization, I've seen people deliver great sales results. And then when you pull the onion back a little bit, you're like, whoa, there was a lot of gray in those results. And so it's not just the results, it's the behavior. You have to provide excellent training, like we talked about, mentoring and other resources to allow people to grow. And then I think what a lot of companies forget is you've got to recognize when people achieve something special, you've got to recognize it. And you have to have compelling rewards. And you have to be consistent. We spend so much time in trying to improve what needs to be improved that we forget when those accomplishments occur, we forget to acknowledge those because we're right back into digging in. We spend so much time putting out fires or trying to improve things that when excellent things happen, you have to take the time to recognize and celebrate. So the myth that servant leaders set low standards is just, it kind of goes back to they're soft, they're weak, they want everyone to hit their objective. That's just not true. I mean, the standards are what they are. It's the focus is on how do you get there and the methods you use to get there.
All right, that's perfect. So, we could have the next president or CEO, or maybe a president or CEO of a company now that doesn't follow the servant leadership culture that we do. Let's speak to those out here on this myth. Servant leaders don't have successful organizations. What would you say to those future CEOs or current CEOs that may be listening to us today?
Yeah, it's this is another one where, there's leaders today within Etech that I know feel that we could be more successful with a different leadership style than servant leadership. And that, I couldn't disagree with that more. And that doesn't come down. There's opportunities, of course, everywhere. And it's not necessarily, the opportunity is not necessarily I don't believe with the philosophy or the strategy. It's with having the wrong people in servant leadership roles. It's really what it comes down to. But as far as servant leaders don't lead successful organizations, there's been many examples in history. I go back to, let's talk about the greatest servant leader, the first servant leader, Jesus Christ. If you think, okay, what was his impact? Did he have a successful organization? If you look at, the man walked the earth 2,000 years ago and Christianity, the teachings of Christianity are alive and well and thriving today. It's the biggest religion, right? It has the most practitioners of his philosophies or his religion, whatever you want to call it. So you talk about, did he have a successful, let's forget about, who he is or who he claimed to be. Was he successful in doing what he did and leading those 12 that he led, that now, look at today, like I said, there's how many, what is the impact he has 2,000 years later? Gandhi, another great example. Gandhi was a believer in servant leadership, peace, nonviolence. He actually studied and implemented a lot of the teachings of Jesus Christ and his own philosophies and the impact that he's had. But I have to look at Etech, and I look at our last 12 years. We really began to come along, regardless of when we began the journey. We really when I started seeing leaders transforming away from the more power style of leadership to the servant style leadership was probably, 2010, 2011. I started seeing some things happening, and I started noticing that, hey, it wasn't us up here preaching down servant leadership. It was bubbling up. And that's really when the company began to transform. And when you look at our results from 2000 and probably 13 till today, it's been a steady, just a steady upward trend. And I think that is because of the investment that we've committed to make and still commit to make, and the journey that we've taken is we are developing and attracting employees who are engaged, loyal, committed, talented. We're not perfect, and we don't keep them all, and we certainly have made a lot of mistakes along the way. But again, I go back to could have we gotten through some of the things we've gotten through in the last 10 years if our organization was different? And I look at COVID as a perfect example. I mean, we absolutely dug in to what we believed, what was important as a servant-led organization. We dug into those principles, and that's what navigated us through COVID. And we didn't just survive, we thrived. So many companies went out of business. So many companies that do what we do went out of business during that time. So, I could go back in history and give you, and Chick-fil-A, there's so many examples of organizations that, Hobby Lobby, that embrace a servant leadership style. But we don't have to look any further than our own Etech to say companies that embrace servant leadership are not successful. That is not true. Companies that say they embrace servant leadership but don't, because they don't understand what servant leadership is, those are the type of individuals that say they're a servant leader but don't understand what it really means to be a servant leader. They're the leaders that cause people to say servant leaders are weak. Servant leaders set low standards. Companies that say we're a servant-led leader organization, and I know some that aren't, it's just they like, it's a thing to say, especially with today's millennials and Gen Y, Gen Z. They definitely respond differently. They respond to more of a servant-led approach versus my generation, the baby boomers, where everything was on, top down, because that's how you were raised back then. So, but servant leaders are organizations that walk the servant leader walk. If they will be successful if they have a great product. If the market's there, there's so many things that go into saying, can an organization be successful? But everything else equal. Okay, if everything else is equal, a company that embraces servant leadership, I believe, and I have seen, will outperform a company that doesn't. That's what I believe in all my heart, and that's what I've seen in my experience. So
yeah, and you're right. We don't have to look any further than Etech. So I call that, and we do see that. You and I have had those conversations about leaders who talk smart, but they don't do smart. I've heard Dylan use that exact same
he uses
language
that all the time.
And the way you're saying is we talk servant, but our boots don't walk servant, right? So and that's easy to see, and that's why people say, like, we've seen it over the years. We've seen other companies, they talk servant, but when it boils down to it, they don't do servant. And I really like that you created these 12 character commitments, and as a company we got together and we said, okay, here's our 12 character commitments, here's how we're going to live out being a servant-led organization. And then we defined what it looks like at Etech. What does it look like to have courage? What does it look like to be adaptable? And I think that roadmap, that clarity, that has really helped our leaders when we're faced with situations, just like you said, with trying to take every one of our employees and get them safely at home working. And we were very successful at that. And I believe everybody tapped into that adaptability and courage. And then that's when we walked out serve. I call it practice your serve. If you ever watch tennis, I'm not sure. I know you're a basketball and a baseball fan and a football fan. But if you're, you're an all sports fan. That when someone's practicing their serve, you see it on the court, right?
Yeah.
In the game. So I believe what we do in leadership development, what you've helped to create, is we're practicing our serve. That way, when it's time to play, you can tell by our swing we've been practicing our serve.
Absolutely.
Yep. So thank you for debunking those. I just have a couple of more questions, if it's okay.
Oh boy.
You mind sitting at the table? Okay. All right. And you need to take a sip of that lemonade.
Yeah. Thank you.
Podcast. It's time to take a quick sip. We're going to wrap up with just a couple more questions. And this question is just kind of, how does servant leadership impact the employee mindset and help us to develop empowered employees, which we call team members? How does that happen?
Well, it goes back to what we were just talking about. It's the behavior that a team member receives, witnesses in their leader, that is going to influence them. So again, if we say we lead by serving, but we don't really do that, boy, that's going to have a worse effect than saying, hey, I'm a autocratic manager. I manage with intimidation, and that's what I do, versus, hey, I'm a servant leader. I'm going to serve you to leave, and then I manage you as an autocrat. That's going to have a worse impact than the first one, because I know what I'm getting into. I work for you. I know how you manage. Okay, I can either embrace it and go with it, or I can leave. Those are the only options. But to stay and complain to others about how you're managing me is really not an option. But so if we're walking our walk, and I've been led over the years by servant leaders, people that I knew cared about me, and not just my results. They cared about my own well-being and my development. It makes you want to win for that person. It makes you want to, I believe, invest in others. You see those people that have invested in you, and the difference that it made in my life, at work, whatever. It makes you want to pass that along, and I've had so many people over the years come back to me, and they whether they're with Etech or not anymore, it's like, man, you you don't understand the impact that you made to me at that point in my life. And a lot of times I don't realize, I don't realize the impact. So I think to try to answer your question when you're working for someone that cares about you and not just your results, but cares about you and you personally, what it is that makes you tick, where it is that you want to go, how can I help you, how can I help you bloom where you are right now? That's the job of a coach, but also beyond that. I mean, how do I help you walk towards what it is that you inspire to while you're blooming where you're planted? I have this conversation a lot of times. People may not be 100% happy with where they are. And so, I say, well, the choices are simple. Number one is you leave, or you decide I'm going to bloom where I'm planted right now. It may not be the best for me, but I'm going to bloom where I'm planted, knowing that another opportunity will come along, because they always do. But to stay and not bloom, and to stay and complain, to stay and be the weeds that choke off the other people that are trying to bloom is not an option, So I believe if we're doing it the right way, and I believe most of I've had a great opportunity in the last month to meet with all the leaders in Rusk and Lufkin and Nacogdoches and Jamaica. I'm going to get to the other centers over the course. Hopefully I'll be able to get to India in the next year. But I've had an opportunity to meet and really have authentic conversation with our leaders, and it really reinforced with me that we're going down the right path, and we're continuing. We're not there yet, but we're going down, and we'll never be there. It's a journey. I'm not worried about the destination. I'm worried about the journey. So I hope, I believe, and I hope it's true that when you're being led by a servant leader, that it truly, it makes you, number one, it not only inspires you to be the best you can be at that time, but it will be something that you'll look back on and just have nothing but good feelings about, so.
All right,
Did I answer your question? I didn't know if I answered.
You answered it perfectly. I have one more ball to throw at you, so we can hit this one home. All right, you ready for it? Check it up. All right.
Hopefully it's a softball.
I'm throwing strikes. All right. So for everyone listening, what would you say are the top 2 things that someone can do to create a servant-led culture? And what are a couple of things that they want to avoid?
Well, I think, again, I go back to our journey, and the first thing we did was rally the top people in the company and said, hey, here's where my heart's at. This is where I believe we need to go. Are you with me? And not everyone was. If you remember, we lost a couple along the way, but if you're with me, how are we going to get there? We had to have a plan. You can't just say, okay, tomorrow we're going to be a servant-led organization. There had to be a plan. And that plan itself was, as you remember, months and months in the making. It didn't just happen. We had to have a plan. So what is the one thing to do? You have to share your heart with your top leaders. They're buying. And once you have your buy-in, then you work with them to create the roadmap. What you don't want to do is just go out there and not have a plan and thrust something top down and say, hey, I've seen it so many times over over my career, okay, hey, we got a new vision and mission for the company. Here it is. And they throw it out there and they put it all over plaques all over the place and nothing ever changes. That's it. We have a new mission. What is it? Well, it's up there on the wall, but it's nothing. It's a two sentences that means nothing to nobody. Okay. I believe our mission resonates with our people because I hear it, and I hear it more and more. And I see it through their actions. We're not just giving back to our customers. More importantly, we're giving back to each other, and we're also giving back to our communities. And how we can do that is through our performance. That's non-negotiable. You got to perform. So the roadmap, you absolutely have to sit down. First, you have to decide if this is where you want to go. I know you working with our teams here in Florida. If servant leadership and that mindset and that if it's not the right fit for the organization, you're never going to get there. And there are some organizations where servant leadership doesn't work. The military is a perfect example. You can't go to war being led by servant leaders. It just won't work. And anyway, so there's got to be, there's got to be a buy-in at the very top of the company. And then when that authentic buy-in is there, then you work with them to create the roadmap. And then you begin, you got to have, and part of that roadmap, there's so much that goes into it. All the things your organization does, creating all this training and the curriculum and the opportunities to be involved within communities and so forth. But you get to a point where it's working when it's not senior management pushing the vision and mission. When all of a sudden the vision and mission starts getting pushed from bottom up, that's when you're getting there.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you spending time, and I want to share this with you. I have proof of this. I have a story to tell you. Have you seen that show Undercover Boss?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know that you could really ever go undercover. I think you would recognize. I want to kind of go undercover for you and close with this today. Yesterday, I spoke with a young lady by the name of Shannon. She is actually the receptionist at the Jamaica Center, our Jamaica Center, Etech Jamaica Center. Okay. And when you're talking about, cascading it from leadership, and when people are pushing it, from the bottom up or the top down, a reverse organizational chart, and you're talking about having buy-in, let me tell you, you don't get to see this because you can't go undercover, but I try to go a little undercover with you. And I want to tell you what Shannon said yesterday. I met with Shannon. She reached out to me and wanted some mentoring. But here are two quotes that Shannon made to me yesterday in the area. We were talking about servant leadership. She said, I want to talk about humility. And here are the two quotes Shannon said, and I wrote them down. She said, in humility, if you find yourself trying to prove a point or protecting yourself, you're not displaying humility. This is what she said to me yesterday. This is our receptionist at our Jamaica Center. Wow. And then the other, if you're proving a point or protecting yourself, you're not displaying humility. That was her first quote. The second quote she made is, humility is reserved for the strongest.
So true.
And I thought that was really powerful. And I just want you to know, since you cannot go undercover, I know that you went around to all of our centers and met with everyone. I just want you to hear, these are quotes being made from the receptionist in our Jamaica Center just yesterday. Prove a point of protecting yourself, and humility is reserved for the strongest. Your footsteps that we're following in, I want to encourage you, it's working, right? And that we are, this is a journey. We understand that there's no end until God decides to take us up. But I think you'll understand that someday what a legacy that you've left. Thank you for taking time with us today. I appreciate you sitting at the table drinking your lemonade. Maybe next time April will give you a snack that you can have.
I am hungry, but it's all right.
All right.
Hey,
Is there
man,
any,
Melissa, thank you so much. Huh?
Yeah. Is there anything you want to close with as we kind of wrap up the table today?
I mean, I love everyone. I want you to know that. I pray for you every day. Every day, I pray for our entire company, all of our people. And you know, I've said in my update, I know some of you don't see my regular updates, but you know, we're on the verge this year of a record year, which is incredible. After 20 years, we're going to have our best year ever this year, and it's a reflection of everybody, and you know what we're trying to do, and you know, we don't focus on those things, but when you focus on the right things, or the people, those things take care of themselves. So keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully there's something from today that's you're gonna be able to take back with you or take home with you, and think about it. And you know, so thank you, Melissa, for this opportunity to share my heart. And I appreciate you and all that you do for our people as well, and our customers and in our communities. You're a phenomenal example of how a servant leader lives their life. So thank you for that. And that's it. Great.
All right.
Great session. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And until next time, we'll see you guys next time at the leadership table, and maybe you can be spotlighted as well. So thanks a lot, Nat. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.